Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me and be free.
So welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Tim, and I think everybody got to say hello, and I'm glad you came. So we're here to celebrate, enjoy the 4th of July, and also to contemplate what does it really mean in 2021. So we'll begin with a reading from Arch, which is the first part of the book, Science of Mind.
So this is the first page in the book, and it starts. These lessons are dedicated to that truth which frees man from himself and sets him on the pathway of a new experience, which enables him to see through the mist to the eternal and changeless reality. Peace be unto thee, stranger. Peace be unto thee, stranger. Enter in and be not afraid. I have left the gate open, and thou art welcome in my home. I have swept. There's room in this house for all. I have swept the hearth and lighted the fire. The room is warm and cheerful, and you will find comfort and rest within. The table is laid, and the fruit of life are spread before thee. The wine is here also. It sparkles in the light. I have set a chair for you where the sunbeams dance through the shade. Sit and rest and refresh your soul. Eat of the fruit and drink of the wine. All is yours, and you are welcome.
It feels so good to be together. It's been so long, so very long. For meditation today, I'm going to do some quotes from Naomi Remen. On Thursday morning, we were doing her book, Kitchen Table Wisdom. And though it isn't at all what you would call religious, it had a spirituality and a depth and a mystery that was just stunning. It just really touched me. Our own self-judgment may heal over time. One of the blessings of growing older is the discovery that many of the things I once believed to be my shortcomings have turned out in the long run to be my strengths. And other things of which I was unduly proud have revealed themselves at the end to be among my shortcomings. Things that I have hidden from others for years turn out to be the anchor and the enrichment of my middle and older years. What a blessing it is to outlive your self-judgments and harvest your failures. There's a Sufi story about a man who was so good that the angels asked God to give him the gift of miracles. God wisely tells them to ask him if that's what he wants. So the angels visit this good man and offer him first the gift of healing by hands, then the gift of conversion of souls, and lastly, the gift of virtue. He refuses them all. They insist that he choose a gift, or they will choose one for him. Very well, he replies, I ask that I may do a great deal of good without ever knowing it. The angels were perplexed. They took counsel and resolved upon the following plan. Every time the saint's shadow fell behind him, it would have the power to cure disease, soothe pain, comfort sorrow. As he walked, behind him the shadow made arid paths green, caused withered plants to grow, and gave clear water to dry brooks, fresh color to pale children, and joy to unhappy men and women. The saint simply went about his daily life, diffusing virtue as the stars diffuse light, and the flowers scent, without ever being aware of it. The people, respecting his humility, followed him silently, never speaking to him about his miracles. Soon they even forgot his name and called him the Holy Shadow. Mystery seems to have the power to comfort, to offer hope, to lend meaning in times of loss and pain. In surprising ways, it is the mysterious that strengthens us in such times. I used to try to offer people certainty in times that were not at all certain and could not be made certain. I now just offer my companionship and share my sense of mystery, of the possible, of wonder. After 20 years of working with people with cancer, I find it possible to neither doubt nor accept the unprovable, but simply to remain open and wait. Over the years, I have seen the power of taking an unconditional relationship with life. I am surprised to have found a sort of willingness to show up for whatever life may offer and meet with it, rather than wishing to edit it or to change the inevitable. When people begin to take such an attitude, they seem to become intensely alive, intensely present. Their losses and suffering have not caused them to reject life, have not cast them into a place of resentment, victimization, or bitterness. From such people, I have learned a new definition of the word joy. I had thought joy to be rather synonymous with happiness, but it seems now to be far less vulnerable than happiness. Joy seems to be an unconditional wish to live, not holding back because life may not meet our preferences and expectation. Joy seems to be a function of the willingness to accept the whole, to show up and meet whatever is there. It has a kind of invincibility that attachment to any particular outcome would deny us. Rather than the warrior who fights toward a specific outcome and therefore is haunted by the specter of failure and disappointment, it is the lover, drunk with the opportunity to love despite the possibility of loss, the player for whom playing has become more important than winning or losing. I think that is freedom.
For to be free is not merely to cast out one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Nelson Mandela, in A Walk to Freedom, the long walk to freedom. So let's take a moment to recognize that freedom as the fountain of all good, or the result of all good. And recognize this presence that is within us and urges us to be free. And let's ask ourselves, how can we live a life that respects the freedom of others and enhances as well? So we know that today we are guided and directed to find that way, to walk that long walk. We are inspired by the words that we have heard already and the ones that we will hear from dear Reverend Tim. And we declare that this is a service that is good and very good, that fills with joy our spirit, and that we celebrate the freedom that we have with great joy, with great abundance, and with wonderful ideas. So we are guided and directed today to open our hearts and our ears to the words that are inspired by divine wisdom and spoken by Reverend T. And we all declare that it is so, and so it is.
Serve and remember to love.
So this is a time of the 4th of July. What does it mean? So one of the things that I noticed is I have a little bit of a problem with the 4th of July. It, to me, often brings up the image of kind of a unhealthy patriotism, a pride without ability to see the parts that are not going so well. And that reminds me of myself, that I want to be valued for my aspirations, for my visions, for my goodwill and my good deeds. And I resent it when people see me for my shortcomings and my difficulties. Did you not find the book? We lost it.
We lost the book.
The book had a great reading in it.
It was great.
I think it wasn't meant to be.
Thanks,
Looks
Charlie.
like we're going to get
Next week.
next
Next time. Well, I'll keep looking and maybe after your time.
maybe maybe a dessert instead of an appetizer. So I think that's a little bit how I experienced the 4th of July. We were playing some of the John Philip Sousa music, which I actually like, and I can even remember enjoying marching to that music. You know, it felt good. I was uplifted. And there's a certain thing about pride and the good things that this country called the United States of America has aspired to in all its history. But the reality, from my perception, is something not so beautiful. Land of the free, who's free? America the beautiful, beautiful for whom? And especially these days, what we've experienced in the last 2 years, yes, we had an epidemic, the COVID epidemic, and that caused some grief and suffering in and of itself, independent of politics, independent of governments, independent of things that were going on outside of us. And it is nice to feel pride. And pride is a good sentiment. I don't know if those of you who were here, was it last week or last month, when we talked about the different levels of consciousness and what the vibrations correspond to, the different emotions, that pride is the first step that's actually above in a positive range. Now, it's not as good as love or compassion, but it is higher than anger or depression. So it's good to feel pride, but it's also good to know the reality. So there's another epidemic that's going on in the United States in the last 2 years, and I call it othering. You are the problem, not me. You aren't working hard enough. You have taken our freedom. You have deprived us of our culture. You, the other is the problem. If whoever they are would only straighten up and change, we would have a great country, but they are blocking us. Yes, Pocky, that's what it's about. He says, this is exciting, something's happening here.
What happened?
So that's the othering of America. And the events.
Rocky, no. Rocky, no.
And I won't go through the events because everybody knows what the events of the last 2 years were. And the energy, and the blaming, and the upsetness, and the anger, and the frustration, and sometimes depression. All that, that's an epidemic. That's contagious. It's very hard not to be wrapped up in that. It's easy to assume a part in it. It's easy to incorporate it into ourselves. And the question is, well, is this really something new? And I told Arlene that I was contemplating visiting American history. And she said, well, that's easy. First, there was no one here. Then the Indians came. And then others came starting 400 years ago, and since then it's been a mess. That's pretty clear, pretty simple, pretty accurate, and it doesn't get all the details, but it's pretty good. And that's what I came to conclude, was that with the first people from Europe landing here, there was othering of the people who were here, pretty much. They were not considered as, quote, fully human somehow, and they were definitely other. Generally a problem, sometimes kind of nice and glad they broke bread with us and brought us food when we were suffering. But nevertheless, their land was not their land, it was our land. Speaking from the viewpoint of a European-origined American. And that was, of course, just the beginning. The next kind of step in this story of woes and of things, of othering that created a underlying degree of misery was the introduction of slaves. And that, of course, has been an ongoing issue in different ways, in different evolutions, in different visitations throughout the remainder of the history since 1600 or so, when Columbus was the first slave trafficker involved in the Americas, and why some people are not happy with Columbus Day celebrations. In addition to these particular crimes or abuses or shadows, behaviors, there was also the ones that were brought over. The general subjugation, denigration of women, the general response to homosexuality, and the play between the rich and the poor, where the rich generally had power over the poor and held the poor in a lower place to maintain their power. So these are not new. These things are moving on in different form with the shift from an agrarian world and economy to that of a trade and commerce and production of cotton, which was more of an industrial, to a fully industrial society in which there was overt conflict between labor and management, into a society in which there were monopolies. In the turn of the last century, with the liberal causes then being one of trying to prevent monopolies. So there have been things ongoing. Now, I've been on the planet approximately a third of the history of the United States. Immediately after World War II, one of the things we experienced was an attack on liberal. Everybody who was, quote, liberal became a communist, and everybody who was a communist was evil. Literally, and needed to be exterminated in some way or another. Certainly not tolerated. So that particular energy, that politics that favored the working class or the lower classes or the less rich, became a scourge that was the anathema and the basis of politics of the right, And on the other hand, the politics of the left was of seeing those who had wealth as being basically the reverse, i.e. they were greedy, abusive, blah, blah, blah. And believing it, feeling it. And that's othering, othering them. Conflict between men and women and the sense that they are the problem, that's pretty eternal in some form or another, and it's had its expressions and ways of coloring what was happening. So this is not new. The question then is there any choice? What do we do about it? The analogy and the image that I like is looking through the window. So we're driving down the road, we look through the windshield and we say, geez, I can't see very well. So we turn on the windshield wipers and we get the window clean. So we go from seeing we can't see well, now we can see it. We get a clean window and we think we see what's happening. So we say, I'm clear, I've got it, I see it. At some point in our lives, we start to realize that how I am seeing it creates it. If I see women as being a problem, boy, can I find evidence for it. It's a shared tendency. If I see and want to create an image of those who are not employed as being a problem because they chose not to do what it would take to get a job or whatever, then I see them as the problem. And it's a projection of my way of seeing and my way of thinking. The question becomes, why do we do that? What is in it for us? It's just lack of consciousness? Well, it's obviously lack of consciousness. The answer is I don't know, but I have a little theory. One of them is the ugly duckling. That's one of the best stories ever. Because is everybody aware that the ugly duckling was a peculiar egg that was dumped into a mother duck's nest, and she took care of it, and this critter came out that was not like the other critters that she had the other eggs she had. And it was kind of big and awkward and didn't fit in. How many of you felt that you didn't quite fit in? Maybe wondered, was I adopted? And some of us were, which does explain some things, but it isn't, but the sensation of I don't fit in, that I'm in the wrong family, I'm in the wrong body, I'm in the wrong place, I'm in the wrong time, that somehow this isn't right. That's part of it. The other part, I think, is the stuff that's brought up at the beginning. Well, it's really what the Four Agreements is about. And that is our domestication. That we develop a sense of kind of responsibility that involves obeying what others want of us and becoming the person they want of us, but not really knowing who we are, being who we are, and feeling like we're not good enough because with some approval we felt okay, but with disapproval it felt like I wasn't worth anything. And the universe, when I'm waiting for my value to be given to me by approval, acceptance, whatever, I will gradually, because I don't feel that good about myself, I will gradually tend to feel less than. In a way that I'm not conscious of. But the result is, the second reason why I think this othering occurs is that if you're more fucked up than I am, then I'm better than you are. Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing much, but I'm doing a little bit, and you're not doing anything. I must be better than you are. And I believe that maybe, at least that may be some of the excuse, or the reason, or the mechanism, or the dynamics that create an abusive society, one that does, as a matter of normality, other people. So is there any remedy for this?
Yeah.
Drumming. We're going to talk about drumming. And I think it's absolutely right, and what it takes, I think, as an initial state, initial kind of determination, is to choose to act differently. In other words, to say, oh, Tim, you're looking down. Arlene is a big collector of street people. So when we walked through the streets of Santa Monica, she would, not everyone, but she would kind of notice people, and in the thing that she didn't read, she has a compassionate gaze, and so they come to her. They can see her, the warmth of who she is, and she has these conversations. And Tim stands kind of back.
It's true.
I'll listen to Duolingo on my phone or do something else. But the predominant reaction I have is based parallel on a thing that my brother-in-law, the public defender, said. When Arlene asked him if any of his clients were guilty, he said, "Oh, they're all guilty." And she said, "Well, how can you defend them?" "Well, they deserve defense." And, "Well, how do you feel about them?" And he says, "Well, they're all really nice people, but they just made bad choices." Now, he's a compassionate person and is uplifting to his clients. But when I see people who made bad choices, I tend to go to, if this guy who says he's unemployed because he hurt his neck, he's over 65, and he's eligible for Social Security, but he's on the street because he can't figure out how to get the help that he needs to take charge of his life and do that. That's how I react. That's what my kind of gut technique is. In other words, I other it, right? I see him as not somehow okay that he didn't make good decisions. Why? Because for me to accept myself, I have to be right. I have to make good decisions. I have to succeed. How did that work? Well, I succeeded. Okay. How did that work? It leaves me fairly separated from other people. It leaves me detached. It leaves me less sympathetic and less helpful and less caring. That's an example of how we are, and each of us is probably different, and some people are very compassionate and other people seem to be almost incapable of compassion and understanding. To step out of our own difficulty as a person individually and as a society is taking compassionate actions. I cannot make a decision to not be an asshole and be nice. If I just decide I'm going to stop, whatever, Stop disliking people. Making a decision doesn't do it. Saying, oh, you should do that, Tim. That would be right. Yeah, you'll be happier. The world will be a better place. All things that I would like to be happier and the world will be a better place. It requires specific actions. When opportunities come up, actually listen to the person who's making noise and laughing and having a good time. Not be distracted by or resentful of her laughing and happy and having a good time, but to celebrate the good and be willing to be present to the suffering, not blaming people for their own suffering, which is my kind of a tendency at certain people in certain ways. Now, each of us has our own part. But the way that we can evolve is to see what the possibilities are of becoming more compassionate. Another way of stating it that I didn't quite get the first 10 times I heard it was to hate the sin, but love the sinner. What does that mean? In this context, for me it means when somebody is having a difficult way that may be in some sense of their own selection, or when I'm having a diversion from being loving and caring, what is the sin that leads me in that diversion? It is, you can name the 7 deadly sins. How many people can do that? But there's sloth and anger and jealousy and rage and a few others. Greed. And that's obviously one of the big drivers in the current situation. If I can recognize my shortcomings, and instead of seeing and projecting them on other people and say, oh yeah, those people who are on the street, many of them made bad decisions. When have I made bad decisions? Holy cow. Most of my life had intrinsically some fairly bad decisions. And one being that instead of really focusing on and continuing to look for what I really wanted to do or be, I took something that I could do well, was valuable, and that I would be valued for. Those are not bad things, but they weren't necessarily my soul's urge. It wasn't really the part within me that was here to be expressed. So I'm worried about somebody not picking up his Social Security check, and I'm not even going, I spent a lot of time not going, just doing something that kind of fit in, that, went along to get along kind of thing. Each of us, I believe, has ways in which we quote sin. Now, I think being judgmental, the 7 deadly sins, I'm fairly prone to most of them, or I've had, outward expressions of them. So it's not like they are not important, but I see being judgmental, being depressed, and a lot of other kind of characteristics that I can say when I'm being that, boy, that is not serving me or others. And my life is more joyous if I can not hate the sin, because hate is one of the deadly sins. It's really, and the energy of hate is not a very positive one, and tends to then lead to self-recrimination, which I don't encourage anybody to be involved in either. But if I can be honest about myself and my shortcomings, then I have a chance to change them, usually, and this is why I'm here, usually by interaction with other people, usually by community, usually by having discussions about, well, what's really happening, Tim? What is behind how you're feeling? Yeah, I know she's the problem, but what's your problem? That there are ways of relating and being with people that help to heal us, help to create that expression within us that makes our life better and makes the life of those we're with better. So the epidemic of othering goes on. And honestly, I don't think we're going to get a vaccine for this one. I think it will go on until it doesn't. And in the meantime, I see my job and what each of us can do is making it a little bit better for ourselves and for others by being a little more on the side of the solution, by willing to be a little kinder, by willing to be of service, and by remembering. Love, serve, and remember. There ought to be a foundation based on that. In fact, there is. It's Ram Dass's. And I love Ram Dass. He not only experienced a whole lot of pain in different ways in his life. So it wasn't like a fun, easy, yippee, isn't life wonderful all the time. But he lived in such a way that he had an amazing clarity and honesty. And the clarity and honesty allowed him to become Ram Dass. He was not born Ram Dass. We are not born who we are to become. As Matthew Fox describes it, we are here to grow our soul. Each of us has a soul. In some ways it's a metaphor. For those who don't believe in souls, take it as a metaphor. But each of us has an essence that we get to engage, evolve, express, or not. Shrink and not. Each of us has seen in other people the shrinking, shriveling, sad, and sorry states, and those who have been fountains of joy. Most of us are somewhere in between, and we have a choice in each moment. So that's why we're here. That's why this exists. That's why you're here, because each of us are soul builders. And together, we are part of creating a greater soul that can create a much better planet. We actually have the power, the energy to do that. The Margaret Reed statement that a few people joined together can make a tremendous difference in the world. In fact, all the things that have happened that improve the world were started by a small group of people. Here's the other person that I didn't mention that makes it all possible. She is my wife and the keeper of the inn, and without her, nothing happens here. So here's the story.
Okay, it's called Compassion is in the Eyes. It was a bitter cold evening in Northern Virginia many years ago. The old man's beard was glazed by winter's frost when he waited for a ride across the river. The wait seemed endless. His body became numb and stiff from the frigid north wind. He heard the faint, steady rhythm of approaching hoofs galloping along the frozen path. Anxiously, he watched as several horsemen rounded the bend. He let the first one pass. He let the first one pass by without an effort to get his attention. Then another one passed by, and another. Finally, the last rider neared the spot where the old man sat, like a snow statue. As this one drew near, the old man caught the rider's eye and said, "Sir, would you mind giving an old man a ride to the other side? There doesn't appear to be a passageway by foot." Reining his horse, the rider replied, "Sure thing. Hop aboard." Seeing the old man was unable to lift his half-frozen body from the ground, the horseman dismounted and helped the old man onto the horse. The horseman took the old man not just across the river, but to his destination, which was just a few miles away. As they neared the tiny but cozy cottage, the horseman's curiosity caused him to inquire, "Sir, I noticed that you let several other riders pass by without making an effort to secure a ride. Then I came up and you immediately asked me for a ride. I'm curious why. On such a bitter winter night, you would wait and ask the last rider. What if I had refused and left you there?" The old man lowered himself slowly down from the horse, looked the rider straight in the eyes, and replied, "I've been around these here parts for some time. I reckon I know people pretty good." The old timer continued, oh my God. The old timer continued, "I looked into the eyes of the other riders and immediately saw there was no concern for my situation. It would have been useless even to ask them for a ride. But when I looked into your eyes, kindness and compassion were evident. I knew then and there that your gentle spirit would welcome the opportunity to give me assistance in my time of need." Those heartwarming comments touched the horseman deeply. "I'm most grateful for what you have said," he told the old man. "May I never get too busy in my own affairs that I fail to respond to the needs of others with kindness and compassion." With that, Thomas Jefferson turned his horse around and made his way back to the White House.
Wow. Cool.
So that seemed like one way of honoring our history, knowing that each of our heroes also had their shadows, but honoring what they contribute. And for me, this story says, yes, try to keep a compassionate view of each person I encounter. For maybe I can make a difference in their lives. Steve is doing double jobs because he's doing the things that he does, plus he's covering for everybody else who isn't here.
So I'm the webmaster. We do have a website called CSLJuly.com. We also have a YouTube channel. It's named the same thing. And on that website, you can find lists of classes. You can make a prayer request. You can donate once. You can donate monthly. All those things are on the website. So I encourage you to look at that and check those out. And then David does the videos. We have the videos of all the past services that David has done, and he will be posting this service there eventually, and also on the YouTube channel.
So we are going to have in-person convention, a live convention, on starting Sunday evening, on the 1st of the August, Sunday evening. We will have dinner and social night, and then on Monday and Tuesday we will have all of our guests that can make it to Chapala speaking, and we have a full program all day long. And Tuesday morning we have the graduation, and we have the first graduation of ministers, speaking Spanish ministers, for the first time in any ministers from CSL, first time in another language, and I'm very proud of that. It's the accomplishment of my life. Now I can retire and live in peace.
And now we have a time for the offering. I guess, Steve, you can play the music and pass the basket.
So we give in gratitude for all that we have received, knowing that as we give, we open ourselves up and allow the universe, allow spirit, allow love to bless us with our gifts. And we give thanks for this place that we may support it financially.
It's like the sunlight on my face.
So we give thanks, knowing that our souls have been nourished, knowing that our minds are awake and alert, knowing that our lives are full and rich, and that wherever we are in this circle of life, we make a difference. We give thanks. So it is.
So it is.
Sir.